Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome on into the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon on the other side of the screen. What's poppin', Rick?
What's going on?
Nothing much.
Nothing much. Training camp.
Training camp. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Training camp starts, and all I see is these videos of people playing, and then I realize, okay, I want to see preseason. Then I watch one preseason game, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Yep.
So anyway, lots of stuff going on. We might hit on a couple of news points before we start our main segment of the show, which is bold predictions. So me and Rick are going to give you 3 bold predictions each, argue about them amongst ourselves, and then we'll send you on your merry way. This week also, well, last week was the first week of training camp, but this week also happens to be the first preseason game on Thursday. So that's that. It's the Raiders against
Jaguars. And
Jaguars.
Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne have already been announced out for that game.
So are we going to get to see Derek Carr and Devonta Adams for at least one drive?
100% no.
Just one drive.
It's going to be all like,
yeah.
The Hall of Fame game is always like
always
second and third string.
Yeah. Well, the other part of that is they're like the one team. I don't know why the NFL does this, but I have been a proponent of moving all of the NFL. Like, you have the Super Bowl 1 week later now, right? Just move it back to normal. Put the Super Bowl the first Sunday in February like you had it, right? And just move the entire NFL season up 1 week. We'll all be happy.
Yeah.
The first Sunday in September, you started off. I don't know why we take Labor Day weekend off for that. Give me a break. I'm all done with that.
Everyone's got to go on their vacations.
I know. Freaking ridiculous. Who cares? I'll watch football on my freaking yachts. Okay?
Yeah, your yacht.
My yacht. Yeah, somebody else's yacht. Anyway. But yeah, so training camp anyway started this week. We have our first preseason game this week. I was all that to say, the Raiders and the Jaguars play one extra preseason game because of the Hall of Fame game. So
right.
That's probably why they don't play. But anyway. So we have quite a bit to talk about, but we're going to give you our bold predictions going into the month of August here, going into draft month. You might have started already, like August 2nd. You might have already done some drafts for your fantasy leagues, which was too early for me. Too early for me, guy. But anyway, so before we do
just a little bit.
Check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, leave a review or share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have. So let's see. Is there anything pertinently that pops up into your mind from training camp this
Tim Patrick tore his ACL.
Yeah,
so that did happen.
Tore his ACL. I was going
sucks
all the
for
way back
him.
to last week. What was last Tuesday?
Yeah. But this does open a huge door for Judy and Sutton to be that Metcalf Lockett role for real. There's nothing in their way.
Yeah.
Even KJ Hamler now might have a small role. He was a wide receiver 4 and has been good in camp. He was a high draft pick a couple years ago. So that's good. I know Sky Moore got hurt, but I don't think it's anything serious. No, I don't know. There's definitely going to be monitor the injuries more than the hype, I would say.
So did we talk about this last week, Clyde, on the PUP?
I think we did. I think we brought it up. I remember talking about it.
I'm trying to find the hit point from last week. I know Debo. Did Metcalf also sign a deal?
Yes, they both signed contracts.
Both of them have contracts. So DK Metcalf stuck in hell forever. Good luck. Travis Kelce restructured his contract. There was a pretty large report. I'm not a rookie wide receiver drafter, but I think there's 2 guys at this point that I would be comfortable with drafting at the rookie wide receiver position. Maybe Chris Olave could be a part of that list, but the 2 main guys are obviously Christian Watson and Sky Moore, right? Christian Watson got hurt, and he's going to miss a couple of weeks of preseason training camp. Aaron Rodgers already hates rookie wide receivers.
That's not a good sign.
It's not a good sign for him. I don't know who you want to go after in the Green Bay Packers receiving core. Based on what I've been hearing, Alan Lazard is the guy.
But even that's just so gross.
It's really gross. I don't even know where he's getting drafted. I mean, honestly, it might be worth like a late round ad just in case, and then like you can cut him 2 weeks into the season or something.
Oh, he's moving up. He's flying up boards.
Good, but I'm out totally on Christian Watson. So
yeah,
like I don't want anything to do with him at least for this season.
Yeah, I think maybe Treylon Burks, but he's getting drafted a little high.
Treylon,
I'm not drafting Drake London because
I've seen the clips.
You've
seen the clips with Treylon?
Yeah, I've seen one or two. It's all good things, but it's training camp. So,
did you hear this whole situation with Kyler Murray and his contract?
Yeah, with the that's hilarious.
The fact that they felt the need to put in his contract that just shows me why the Arizona Cardinals will probably never win playoff games.
Right. Everybody's
that means
saying that's a
something
normal
wrong
thing, but
yeah,
it's still a little weird, is it not? And the fact that it went public is also weird as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Matt Rule has been making Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield split first-team reps in camp. Everyone and their mother knows that Baker Mayfield is going to be the starter, so I don't know why we're wasting our space with that.
Yeah, well, Panthers, they might.
They'll go with Sam Darnold week 1
to start the year. Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett has been confirmed the starter if Deshaun Watson is suspended, which he was for 6 games.
Jacoby Brissett.
Mitch Trubisky has been the Steelers' first-team offense quarterback, but they've been splitting.
That's what there was a report that came out today saying that it's Mitch Trubisky's job to lose. So he's pretty much all but they want him to start week 1. And there's been some negative reports about Kane Pickett. Early in camp, rookie quarterback.
He hasn't been Mac kind of, I don't know. I can't remember really. Mac was losing the job too.
I think Mac had a bad first day and then was great pretty much after that.
Yeah.
So.
Usually like the first padded practice is where you start seeing stuff. But yeah, I've been hearing the same thing about Kenny Pickett. Which is not it sounds like it's gonna be Mitch. For how long though? That's the real question.
Right. For how long?
Monday morning quarterbacks Albert Breer reports that Donovan Peoples-Jones is already a favorite of Deshaun Watson's. Do you take anything in that for DPJ? Or are you in now that you
late round value? Why not?
Antonio Gibson on the 27th suffered a small hamstring injury and he was sitting out practice. I don't know what that means for him.
I think that's probably fine.
Keep an eye on it. Rams in love with Allen Robinson.
Oh, I'd like to hear that.
Love. Hold on a second. Let's see if we got the full quote because I kind of want to read it.
While you're looking for that, this isn't a report, but there was numbers from Eagles practice where Hurts, I think, had 20 pass attempts. I believe AJ Brown had like 9 of them. So,
don't say things like that to me. I'm trying
Goddard,
very hard not to draft AJ Brown in the 3rd round.
It was really just 3. It was really just Brown, Goddard, and Smith, but Smith was 3rd on the targets. Daniel Jones still sucks. Newsflash.
Daniel Jones still.
But Kadarius Toney does look like the wide receiver 1. He's gotten the most targets. Wando Robinson has been doing pretty good. So the receivers are still there, but
yeah,
Danny Dimes. I'm trying to think of what else I've seen for reports.
I'm going through all of them. Right now.
Evan Ingram has been bad. Who would have guessed? Poor Trevor Lawrence.
He's terrible. Corey Davis
N'Keal Harry
10, 15
has
pounds.
Been bad, so poor Justin Fields. Michael Thomas is moving around pretty well, so we'll see how that goes. I'm not putting my eggs in that basket yet, but Will Fuller, there was a rumor that the Browns and the Cowboys are interested in signing him.
Browns and Cowboys.
Which that would be interesting for CeeDee Lamb if they brought him a little forward.
So I think the major piece of news, though, is the Deshaun Watson suspension.
Yes.
And we'll finish on that. So Rick and I were kind of talking about it prior to the show because Rick was a big Watson guy prior to the
previous
to the stuff that the allegations that came out against him. But just as a football wise, not football player, not the person himself, but the player on the field.
Right.
Rick really liked what he could do. He was obviously freaking fantastic for fantasy football because he could rush, and he also had he's basically like a mixture of like poor man's rushing Lamar Jackson and having the ability of throwing over 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. So he was great for fantasy football.
Right.
The question is, do you want to sit, if he's gone for 6 weeks, do you want to draft him, stream quarterbacks for 6 weeks and have a roster clogger until you get this guy, and then hopefully he ends up being really good and it really puts all your eggs in the Deshaun Watson basket? Or do you want to just go elsewhere and not draft him? It's kind of a tough conversation, but I still feel like when he's starting, he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And if he's Deshaun Watson and he's playing like Deshaun Watson, he's top 5. The big issue for I think a lot of people that they haven't really factored in for the Browns is the fact that they run a Kevin Stefanski offense. And Kirk Cousins has been really good fantasy-wise in a run-first scheme, which Stefanski came out of.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's had some fantasy success, but he never finishes, higher than 9 when he's actually really good. So I think there's concerns here for me that obviously it's clear with Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, the offensive line, the direction that their offense is going and the way they run their offense is predicated on the run. So there might be a limit to how many passing opportunities Deshaun Watson gets. Like, he's not going to throw it 650 times. He's going to throw it like 550 or lower. And if that's the case, does that affect his fantasy ceiling in terms of this guy can be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football when he's playing and he's on? So I think there's just a lot of questions surrounding Deshaun Watson. Obviously, I mean, even the suspension itself, it could turn into 8 games. It could turn into 10 games. I don't know. I have no idea. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean 6. I thought he was going to get. I said this before. I think like 10 games.
Yeah.
So 6 is a little less than I thought. So it could be good for like Amari Cooper, Kareem Hunt, some of those skill players in the Browns. Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is Kevin Stefanski has never had a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. But I do think they are. I mean, it's going to be a run-first offense either way. But they might throw a little bit more. Not sure how that plays out.
No, I agree with you. I think there's passing opportunities there, but I think it really does. He could completely change the system, but I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think that'll happen. I think it will be a run-first offense, though. You're all right.
Okay. Any more thoughts?
No, we can move on.
Okay, let's move into, without further ado, the main portion of this episode, which is bold predictions for the 2022 fantasy football season. This is just, this is just a time for Rick. This is one episode per year that Rick and I can just say kind of crazy stuff and, we'll try to make it make sense. But we have bold predictions on the season. Sometimes we hit, sometimes we're just dead wrong. So who you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Floor is yours.
Say it again.
The floor is yours.
Oh, I said what? I thought you said what is yours, and I'm like, well, if I say it, then that just defeats the purpose of. But anyway, all right. So my first bold prediction, we'll try to get through these relatively quickly, is that Saquon Barkley will underperform his ADP, which currently sits at 13, RB13, ADP of 25. Underdog, he is at ADP of 18. So it's kind of close. There's still room for him to go up, though, in the regular community, not the best ball community. So I'm curious to see if that changed. What I've noticed in my mock drafts is that he's starting to, like somebody like Aaron Jones was slipping to the end of the second round, and now that's kind of swapped from Aaron Jones slipping to the end of the second round to Saquon Barkley slipping to the end of the second round. So he is starting to fall into this vicinity where it's not really a horrible draft selection.
Oh, come on. Say it. Be honest. I know how you feel.
It's not a horrible draft selection late, early third. But the issues with Saquon Barkley are prevalent. And I think there's several things to me. First is obviously injury. He's been dealing with that for a couple years. And I'm not really necessarily concerned about him having another injury. Like, that's not why I'm not drafting him, because I think he could totally play a full season healthy. I don't think that's a problem. I mean, the dude's 25 years old, so he's still, doesn't really have, like, he's still young and he can still play. But I think the injuries that he has sustained are the ones that are going to affect him. He had an ACL. The main situation was the ACL, MCL, and meniscus tears. And for a running back, that's a lot to overcome. And he's had plenty of ankle strain. He's had like 2 or 3 ankle sprains, and just a lot of crap that has kept him out and off the football field. So I think in the injuries that he has sustained are more or less going to affect his play long term. So the player that Rick knows that won him a fantasy championship in his rookie season, right? Was that his rookie season?
Yep.
Yeah. Is that player that had this ceiling, you see Jonathan Taylor now. That was the ceiling for Barkley. Like, he was going to be the RB1, the best running back in football for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And I just, with the injuries, I don't know if that's possible for him to reach that now, especially now that he's aged 225. Usually running backs around 27, 28 start falling off. So, he's only got a couple of years left. That and the Giants blow. They're not a good football team. Rick told me that Daniel Jones, 5 for 15, baby. You're going to practice the other day. Total Daniel Jones. The offense sucks. It's not going to be good. And I would say their best skill player is Saquon Barkley. What our defense is going to do? They're going to try to stop Saquon Barkley. But the biggest thing that was a shocker to me was that he played last year. Like, real games. Because in your mind, your mind, my mind, everyone's mind, people are like, oh, he was hurt last year, which he was. In the time that he had on the field, and I'm just going to count games where he had over 80% snap percentage so that we're not going like, okay, this guy's out. So he had a game against Washington. He had 8.9 fantasy points in that game against Washington, 81% snap share. He was RB32 on the week. Against Atlanta, 83% snap percentage, 21 fantasy points. This is in PPR, 9 on the week. He played New Orleans, 88% snap percentage. He was number 2 on the week. And then after that, he had 82 snap percentage against Philadelphia, 9 points. Can I put the 78 in there against Miami? I'm going to do it. 11, which is RB20 on the week. And then he had the rest of them were like 50%. But most of his games on the season, he had like 2 RB1 performances on the season, and that was earlier in the season against, Atlanta against New Orleans. And when I saw the numbers from last year and I saw how much he actually played and how much opportunity share he got in these games and what he was doing with that opportunity, it kind of scared me away from Saquon Barkley a little bit. So to me, injuries, underperformance from last season and prior seasons based on the expectation that he's had. And did I already say his football team, his crappy football team?
You did mention that, yeah.
So between all of those metrics, it kind of it scares me away from him. And then the only other thing I was gonna pull up was the metric. So expected fantasy points per game last year, he had 13.1 expected fantasy points per game. He ended up with 11.4 on the season, which was negative 1.62. So he underperformed last year. To me, he's getting drafted off the board right now as the running back 13. It's not a bad area to take him, but I don't think that he has this high ceiling. I think he ends up underperforming his ADP. He ends up anywhere between mid to low end RB2, and he kind of disappoints people a little bit. But where he's getting drafted is certainly not a horrible location where you're going to get absolutely freaking killed. I'm just looking for players who give me at least some upside.
Will be productive. Yeah.
Not even just will be productive, but like that have you're talking about guys like Javonte Williams or even Ezekiel Elliott in the same range as him. And I'm like, I'd rather take Javonte knowing that he has a high ceiling if he breaks out and has a really good season than I see Saquon Barkley having. So that's just me. I don't have any hatred for Saquon Barkley. It's just, he's on the Giants. He has injury problems, and he's underperforming the last 2 seasons what he's supposed to be performing at. So I think the expectations should be adjusted for Barkley, but he will underperform his ADP. Bold prediction.
The only thing I disagree with you with the whole time, because you make valid points with my guy, Saquon Barkley, and the offense, how awful it is and everything. The only thing that you said that I disagreed with was I do think his ceiling is high. Last year, he was injured, but he did play in games. I think he was injured while playing because he didn't look right. Teams were also playing the run heavy, and the offense was just horrible.
I just don't think that's going to change.
And will that change this year? I don't know. It might not.
Probably.
I mean, he's a very risky pick.
Yeah.
But what I will say about his ceiling is if he can just get back, because he averaged like 3.6 yards per carry or something horrible like that. Mm-hmm. But before in his career, he was near like in the high 4s to 5 yards per carry. If he can, let's say he's back to being close to Saquon. Like last year, if he was 50% of what he used to be, let's say he gets to like 85% of what he used to be.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the only few running backs in the league that's going to get a real workhorse load, because the RB2 on that team is Matt Breida, and then it's like special teamers. Yeah. So like he might get like 80% of the running back work. Like Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, maybe not even Jonathan Taylor because of Nate Hines, but like I'll say Jonathan Taylor as well. Like those types of running, there's only like 3 or 4 in the league that's going to get the workload that I think Saquon could get. But you made all valid points. It's hard to argue.
Yeah, he scares the crap out of me, and I'm like,
as he should.
In the home league,
scare the crap out of
in the home league, he has been falling into my vicinity, a lot.
Or if you're gonna end up with McCaffrey and Saquon, that's crazy.
Your guys.
No, you won't take Saquon though. You'll take.
But it was funny because I was actually researching for that draft, and like I was kind of like, Saquon was not really in my thoughts, and as I noticed that he was starting to fall, I'm like, okay, I might have to make a decision between this guy and multiple players, right? Yeah. And then I pulled up his numbers, and it was like just last season, forgetting about the snap percentage in half PPR, 2, 6, 15, 23, didn't even hit a fantasy point, but he missed that game, only played 9% of the snaps. And then he had 5 when he came back from injury, 5, 5, 7, 15, 4, 2, 10, and 4. And I was like, oh my God. That's brutal. Like that scares me. Like this is not just a risk. This is like, okay, I have to love the player and believe in him in order for that to happen. I just don't, like, to me, buying injuries is already hard enough. I've done that with players before, and like, is this just an injury dip for, Saquon Barkley's ADP and people actually really love him and they're like, okay, I'm going to take Saquon because he's a value right now based on what he produces? Or is this just what Saquon Barkley is now because the Giants suck and because everyone just is focused on stopping Barkley? If Daniel Jones ends up being the second coming of Josh Allen under Brian Daboll, then I love Saquon.
So
saddle up. But like what are the chances of that happening? What are the chances the Giants become a top 15 offense? Not very high. So
not high.
Anyway, that is why. Rick, give me your number 1.
Okay, my number one is Darnell Mooney will be a top 15 wide receiver. Was thinking about going even spicier to say top 12.
But Chicago.
Should I say? But yeah, Chicago kind of hurts. But top 15 because, first of all, he's a pretty good player. Second of all, he is in offense where yes, it might not be good this year, but was it good last year? It wasn't. It was probably one of the worst offenses in the league. It was one of the worst passing offenses in the league. They only had 16 total touchdowns and 3,200 passing yards as a team. That was horrible. That was bottom 3 in the league. Only I think the Giants and the Giants, Jaguars, and Panthers. So it was 4th worst in the league. Those are the only teams worse passing offense. Even the Jets had a better passing offense than the Bears last year. So Bears had a horrible passing offense. No matter what you feel about Justin Fields, I feel like he can beat 16 touchdowns and 3,000 yards. Even if he sucks next year, I think he's probably throwing like 20 touchdowns with like 3,700 yards. So that's already an improvement there, let alone the potential of what Fields maybe could be, what if Fields is good next year. But even if he's not that good, it's not really going to change from last year. And Mooney being really the only guy on that team that's going to get targets again. And he had 140 last year with Allen Robinson. The wide receiver 2 right now on that team is Brian Pringle.
Byron Pringle, my dude.
So, or N'Keal Harry. So that leaves Darnell Mooney. So Darnell Mooney could very well get 170 targets this year.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening, but I mean, it could. He has that kind of potential.
And he only played
last year with the 140 targets, he only had a 57 catch percentage. He only had 4 touchdowns, so he was inefficient. Didn't get a lot of touchdowns, and he was still wide receiver 27. So you get more targets, you get more efficiency. I think he's going to get more than 4 touchdowns. No guarantees because it's the Bears, but I think he's going to get more than 4 touchdowns, being really the only receiving option other than maybe Cole Kmet. You add all those things in, I think he's the best lock for the guys that are clearly outside of the top, 20 guys who could take a big leap into that top 15, top 12 area. So that's why I have Darnell Mooney there as my first guy. Didn't even really think about this one. It was just the easiest one for me. In my projections, I believe I have him just purely based off projected points. I think he's like my wide receiver 16. So
yeah. And I think like it really depends. Like obviously the Bears have, according to PFF, the 30th, what was it? The 30th ranked offensive line. So their offensive line sucks. Monty's okay. Kmet's okay. Then Darnell Mooney obviously is there, but like it really is all on Justin Fields. Like, you saw last year Cincinnati, like obviously Joe Burrow had a much better rookie season than Justin Fields did, but like Joe Burrow was able to have a lot of success last year despite the fact that his offensive line was terrible, but he also had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. So, the Bears have such a high chance for a terrible offense that a guy like Darnell Mooney ascending into that top 12 would be tough. So I think you're wise to spice down your take a little bit to 15. But I agree with you. Like looking at the way Darnell Mooney played last year and the amount of opportunity and target share he got, he's going to get that target share again, if not more. And if Justin Fields throws 20 plus touchdowns, I think it's a really good shot that he finishes wide receiver 15, 16, in that range. So I actually agree with you.
This is kind of a weird stat, but who do you think Mooney has one of the best chances of having the highest team percentage of targets? And by that, I mean the highest amount of targets on the team. So like Cooper Kupp had like a 30% target share last year. So he had 30% of the team's targets. Is there a wide receiver? I mean, maybe Cooper Kupp, obviously.
It depends on how much they throw the ball, really. But I think there's
it
definitely an
doesn't because it's
opportunity.
the percentage of the. So it doesn't matter how many
No, that's
targets.
what I was gonna say. I definitely feel like of the targets that he gets, I think he'll definitely be in like the 25 to 30 range.
Right. I mean, I don't think there's many players in the league that's going to have a higher individual
That's getting drafted
team
where he
target
is.
percentage. There's guys that are going to have more targets because the team throws the ball more, but like maybe Stephon Diggs, like
Let's just hope
maybe
Justin
Justin Jefferson probably
overcomes
will.
everything that that freaking Bears offense is going to be.
Right. Well, if the Bears offense is even half decent, then Mooney's going to have a big year.
Yeah. So let me get to my second bold prediction here, which is Travis Etienne ends 2022 as a top 10 running back. So I didn't not go spicy. There has been some reports surrounding, and I'm trying to pull that up now, but James Robinson, I don't believe he started on the PUP, which is kind of shocking because I did not expect that.
Yeah. I didn't expect it either.
I wanted to pull that up, though, just to confirm that that's right, and I'm not thinking about another running back. So yeah, James Robinson, Achilles will not begin Jaguars training camp. He's on the PUP list. So he's going to start on the PUP. But not only that, people have been watching Etienne, and some reporters are saying that Travis Etienne has been the star of Jaguars training camp so far. He was probably the best pass catching back in that last class. And he has the opportunity to absolutely explode this year. And if James Robinson starts the season on the PUP, he has to at least sit out 4 games. And I would imagine that he sits out like 6 to 8 games, just based on like the Achilles injury and how long it takes to recover from that. And I think by the time James Robinson gets back, Travis Etienne will be firmly entrenched in that running back situation. I have zero stats about Etienne because he's basically a rookie at this point. He has not played a single snap in the NFL. Usually running backs coming off ACL injuries are a little bit tougher to project and predict, but I think the way that they're going to utilize Travis Etienne through the air is going to make him like it. Even he kind of reminds me a little bit of Alvin Kamara, and I feel like you could see that kind of role for him where he touches the ball on the ground like 200 to 220 times maybe, which is a lot for a running back in a non workhorse like team. But or like you see Austin Eckler who catches freaking 70 or more passes every single year. I could see Etienne do that where he doesn't touch 250 carries, but he does get in the range of like 90 to 100 targets this year from Trevor Lawrence. So I'm excited to see what Etienne does, but I think he has top 12 in his repertoire, and I think he actually does it this year. And I think a lot of people will be shocked by the upside that he provides.
Yeah, I like that one. Etienne was one of the guys I was considering for that. He's obviously a very good player from what we've seen in camp. Mm-hmm. He was a high draft pick, so even though we haven't seen him in the NFL, we have those expectations. He's going to be one of the leading receivers probably on the Jaguars as well, kind of play that DeAndre Swift role. Mm-hmm. In PPR leagues, I think he's going to be very, very good this year, so I like that one. My second one is this one's a lot of people are not going to like this one because there's a lot of people against this guy, but it's Cam Akers will not disappoint and finish in the top 12 for running backs. I know a lot of people are anti Cam Akers, but I will make my argument for one. That Rams offense probably going to be top 10 in the league again. I think they were 7th in the league last year, so they're obviously going to have a good offense. They have usually used one running back. Even if the season end carries are similar, if you go by week to week, they will use an individual running back until that guy gets hurt or he really slows down, then they might switch to another guy. But usually on a game-to-game basis, there's one guy who gets majority of the work. So it's going to start off with Cam Akers. He's going to get that opportunity. And based on training camp reports, he's been very good. Says he feels 100%. He said, and quote, "I'm expecting to play at a much higher level this season." People and I've said this before, have used obviously the Achilles. It's no joke. It's a very big injury against him, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But to use the stats last season against him, I don't think is fair because it was months off the Achilles. He's now over a year off the Achilles, so it's a huge difference.
And
if he's ever going to be the same player, it'll be now, right? So yeah, and the Rams, his only competition is really Darrell Henderson. Outside of him, it's nobody. It's the Jake Funk guy that they had.
Jake
Funk. Who I don't think is really going to do much. So it's really just Henderson. So as long as Cam Akers plays decent, he's going to keep the job, which means he's going to be a workhorse. We've seen it with Todd Gurley. We saw it with Henderson a little bit last year before he got hurt. Then it became Sony Michelle. Sony Michelle didn't even play for the team the first few weeks, and he played, but he wasn't really involved. And then finished the year with over 200 carries. So, and they didn't run the ball a lot last year. They only ran it 420 times. You could tell they were throwing it more than they wanted to. The year before that, they ran the ball 473 times. So Cam Akers has a chance to be a true workhorse in a top 7 offense in the NFL.
Yeah,
I will take those odds all day. If he burns me, he burns me. But
yeah,
whatever.
So Sean McVay did say in an article on the Rams website, he said, he's talking about Darrell Henderson. He said, I look at it as if we've got 2 starting running backs on the team.
He said that last year, though, too.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say, is that there's some coaches that, like Dan Campbell, I've noticed, he just says it what he's going to do on television. So, you know what you're getting with
the whole game plan.
Sean McVay, he posts the game plan on his Instagram. Sean McVay does not do that. He tries to play close to the vest. He tries to talk up every single one of his players. He does get involved in a lot of coach speak. So I would not be concerned if you are a Cam Akers guy to draft him. I wouldn't be concerned at all. I mean, you're spending a 4th round pick, most likely late 3rd, early 4th round pick on him in a 12-team league anyway. So it's not a big deal. But this is what he always does. He says, I'm going with 2 running backs, and then he gives Cam Akers 30 carries. So, it's going to be Cam Akers. I don't like Henderson blows. And I mean, he's not terrible, but he's a high-end handcuff, I guess. And even if they do split, I still think that Cam Akers will get the red zone opportunities. Cam Akers will get 250 carries, and he'll probably get the pass-catching opportunities. So I think you'll see Henderson in there to spell Cam Akers, but I'm not concerned about those comments at all.
Yep, neither.
All right, and my last one, completely no sources here. But I think Jimmy G ends up in Seattle. A trade is going to happen. Some people have been talking about Cleveland. If the suspension is long, we know it's 6 games now, and if there's no appeals from either side, then it'll stay 6 games. I feel like at this point for Jimmy G, that team is out of the question for him. A lot of people were thinking that Jimmy G would go to Cleveland and take over for the first 8 weeks, and then after that they would switch to Deshaun Watson. And it's not a bad plan for the Cleveland Browns. They probably need to win some football games to have playoff hopes if Watson's out for half the season. So that is kind of difficult for the Browns to pull off at this point. There's been other rumors about him going to Atlanta. I think Atlanta's tanking. I think they want the 1st overall pick, and they want what's his name, Bryce Young. So I think that's what's going to end up happening for Atlanta. And I think there's one team that still believes they have the talent, which I think at the running back position they do, at the wide receiver position they do, at tight end and at offensive line they kind of do, to win at least some football games. And it's the Seattle Seahawks. So I think Jimmy G either gets traded or gets cut and the Seattle Seahawks sign him. I think he'll end up getting cut because I don't think that that there's going to be a trade market for a $27 million contract or whatever it is. But Jimmy G ends up on the Seattle Seahawks, and because of this, I think it elevates Metcalf a little bit, obviously, and I think it elevates a lot of the players on that team. Like, you're not going to get, a crap bag freaking quarterback over here out of what's his name? I don't even remember. It's not worth remembering.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, I think Jimmy G ends up on the Seattle Seahawks and plays for them.
Yeah, that's a solid prediction there.
If he goes to
my
Seattle,
last one,
does he have any fantasy upside? Jimmy G himself?
No, not really.
No, not really.
My last one is Russell Wilson will finish as the top 5 quarterback. It's a little bit of a hot take, but you look at the recent quarterbacks that have moved on from teams. You look at Matt Stafford. He went from quarterback 15 to 5, going from Detroit to the LA Rams. Tom Brady went from quarterback 11 to quarterback 7, going from the Pats to the Buccaneers. Now, those guys might have been in pretty good situations, but Russell Wilson is in a good situation himself. I think the wide receiver depth is a little bit better than it was in Seattle. The offensive line is definitely better than what it was in Seattle. And he's still got good running backs and solid receivers as well. So I think he's in the same, if not a better situation. And you look at Russell Wilson since 2013, QB8, QB3, QB3, QB9, QB1, QB9, QB3, QB6. He's finished inside the top 3 multiple times, inside the top 9, really, every year of his career outside of last year and his rookie season. So, and last year he was playing hurt on pretty bad team. So his touchdowns were down, pass attempts were down, yards were down. But he was still pretty efficient. And reports early on in camp say that Russell Wilson wants to play an accelerated offense. It's funny, the coach that they hired from Green Bay, Nathaniel Hackett, said that Russell Wilson's going to set the offensive pace for training camp and the regular season. So it seems like Russell Wilson's running the offense, even though they hired an offensive-minded coach. But all that is good things for Russell Wilson. I know Tim Patrick's a pretty big loss, but I think KJ Hamler can fill that wide receiver 3 role. He's still got Judy and Cortland Sutton, obviously, and they might even bring somebody in now with that injury. Who knows? But I like Russell Wilson, not to mention that he can still run, and I think it's going to be a top 10 offense in the league.
I agree. I like Russell Wilson as a top 5 quarterback. I don't know if I'm as spicy. But
it's a bold take, right?
Bold prediction. That's exactly what that is. But there you have it. Bold predictions for the 2022 fantasy football season. This week we got a lot of stuff going on. Mock draft on Thursday. Tomorrow we have our top 5 value picks, and we're just going to keep churning out content for you as you prepare for your drafts. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Bye.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.